Well, hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. On behalf of IFLA Local History and Genealogy Library Services to Multicultural Populations and Middle East and North Africa Regional Division, I welcome you all. I would like to thank IFLA for their support in providing the Zoom platform, especially Megan Price for her continued support, also for Jennifer Brannock for doing so much work to get this up and going. Today's webinar is coordinated by IFLA Local History and Genealogy, Library Services to Multicultural Populations Section and Middle East North Africa region to provide the strategy for making all Ottoman records accessible and usable to local and global researchers. Before I introduce our esteemed speaker, I would like to remind everyone that comments are welcome in the chat box at any time. And if you have any questions regarding the webinar, please post them in the Q&A box. Also, as a reminder, you will receive the recording after the webinar is over. And now on to our introduction of our presenter, Dr. Jonathan McCollum. Dr. Jonathan McCollum is a historian of the Middle East and Ottoman and Turkish language specialist. He is a visiting professor at Brigham Young University, specializing in the history of the Eastern Mediterranean world, and consults with FamilySearch and Ancestry corporations on Middle East family history records. Excuse me. His current book, manuscript, The Anti-Colonial Empire, Voluntarism and Humanitarianism in the Late Ottoman World in 1908 through 1924, investigates the role of the humanitarianism and voluntarism in the final wars of the Ottoman Empire and the independence movements of its successor states. He has received fellowships from the Fulbright Program, the Council for American Overseas Research Centers, and the American Research Institute in Turkey, and the Institute of Turkish Studies. After completing his BA and his MA in history at Brigham Young University, Dr. McCollum worked in the field of education in Turkey and Qatar for several years before returning to graduate school at UCLA, where he obtained his PhD in Middle Eastern history in 2018. So we're glad to have all of you here with us, and we hope you enjoy today's webinar. Dr. McCollum.
Thanks, Sherry, and thanks for arranging this, inviting me here, Sherry and Jennifer. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to everyone on this webinar. I'll be speaking, of course, today about FamilySearch's Ottoman initiative, and this is an initiative to make the records of the Ottoman Empire usable for the world. That means accessible and also legible, readable for the world, which is quite a task, and I'll explain why. We are moving towards this as an organization, but we need the help of many individuals and many other organizations around the world to really help the world to be able to access all that is extant in the many archives and the many collections from the Ottoman Empire. And I'll start off this presentation framing this in a historical context. So this sort of Ottoman initiative, I'd say, is an answer to the Eastern question for archives and libraries around the world. Of course, with the Eastern question, I'm referring to the old sort of 19th century, early 20th century Eastern question. If you think back to Europe and its age of hubris in the late 19th and early 20th century, they always had questions, and they always were trying to resolve these questions. And one of the questions that they had, right, that everyone sort of understood, it could be in a newspaper article in London or in Paris or in St. Petersburg, but if they mentioned the Eastern question, everyone immediately thought of the Ottoman Empire. And so what was this Eastern question? The question was what to do with the Ottoman Empire. Of course, let me see, here we go. Of course, at this time, the Europeans viewed the Ottoman Empire as the so-called sort of sick man of Europe. This was a time of heightened competition between the various great powers of Europe. You can think of the Great Game that was occurring in Central Asia between Great Britain and Russia. You can think of the many colonial disputes around the world between Britain, France, and later Germany. You can think of this arms race that occurred between Germany and Britain, but there was heightened competition, extreme competition between the great powers of Europe. And one of the ways that that competition manifested was in the acquisition of more territory and more influence in territories around the world. And so the question was, what do we do with the Ottoman Empire? The Europeans, of course, didn't ask the Ottomans, and you can see that in this comic here that's from Punch, a British satirical weekly magazine. You have the Ottoman Sultan Abdul Hamid II here, and he is looking at this prospectus that he just sees on the wall, and he's looking at it and it says, you know, calling for the reorganization of the Ottoman Empire. Of course, he is the ruler of the Ottoman Empire, and he is learning about this, right, from this poster in English. Because at this time, the Europeans didn't really think that they had to confer with the Ottomans about what they were going to do with this empire. What they were most concerned about was each state wanted a piece of the Ottoman Empire, but they didn't want a war to break out in Europe because of that piece. We get this phrase, the sick man of Europe, actually from this man here, Tsar Nicholas I. Right at the eve of the Crimean War, he was speaking with the British Foreign Secretary, and he referred to the Ottomans as sort of the sick man of Europe that had fallen into decrepitude. Of course, if you remember the Crimean War, it was a European-wide conflict that occurred in the Crimea, which is also a location of war today, with a lot of involvement from powers around the world. It was to bolster the Ottomans that the French and the British went to war with the Russians. And of course, it was a very bloody conflict. You may remember, of those of you who know your history, here we have Florence Nightingale. She is the founder, or sort of accepted as the founder, of modern nursing. She was involved in that conflict. We get a lot of phrases from this conflict in English. But I won't go into all of that. It's an interesting conflict, but this was one of those moments or flashpoints in which a portion of the Ottoman Empire was fought over between, right, Russia, the Ottomans, and the British and the French coming in to prop up the Ottomans. Of course, we see this again pictured in 1911 here. The Italians, General Caneva is trying to sort of cut off here the Ottoman Sultan is depicted as a sick man, right? This is from the Neue Freie Presse. This is a Viennese newspaper, and he's trying to chop off a limb of the Ottoman Empire. This would have been Libya at that time. Unfortunately for him, and fortunately for the Ottoman Empire, right, he has enough strength to sort of kick the Italian away, who then hides and then calls over his European friends to try to explain to the Ottomans why they need to give up this this limb, right? Why the Ottoman Sultan should allow Italy to come over in and saw off his limb, in essence, right? Giving up Libya to Italy for the sake of European peace. So this was sort of the Eastern question, was how does Europe equitably divide up the empire without going to war? And of course, that's precisely what happens. They divide up the empire by going to war with one another. And it's, right, one of the most catastrophic wars in human history, and certainly in the 20th century is only less bloody than the Second World War. So the Turk, right, the sort of feared Turk for the Europeans had expanded all throughout Europe. But now, right, in its age of sort of so-called decline, I would argue it's not so much decline as it is sort of Europe taking off and advancing. But the once feared and dreaded Turk now becomes this object of international importance. And it's one that can cause a lot of consternation and difficulties. And of course, right, ultimately a lot of bloodshed. And so obviously it was these questions that I pose is how does one split apart an empire? That was the difficulty for the great powers of Europe. They weren't able to do it without, right, killing each other and a whole lot of, right, Ottoman subjects in the process. And we are also faced, I'd say, as archivists, historians, librarians, with a similar problem today, right? How do we equitably split apart this historical record? And we're left with a sort of status quo that is very difficult when we try to approach the Ottoman Empire. So let me speak a little bit about the scope of Ottoman records. I'll give you a rundown of Ottoman history very rapidly, just so you get an idea of where this empire emerged and how far it extended and where you find, right, its records. So it is an empire for over 6 centuries. It starts at the very beginning of the 14th century, basically on the marches between, right, the ailing Greek state of Byzantium, right, the Byzantine Empire, that is just a shell of its former self and former glory. And it rapidly expands at the expense of this ailing empire. So from the year 1300 over to a century and a half later, 1453, it eventually absorbs the territories of the Byzantine Empire and many of the small Christian principalities that were propping it up in the Balkans. And really, the Ottoman Empire, when we think about it in history, many times we think about it in terms of a Middle Eastern empire. That is not the way the Ottomans saw themselves, and it's not really necessarily what this empire was historically. It gained far more territories early on in the Balkans, so in Europe. In fact, our term Balkan comes from a Turkish word, Balkan, meaning sort of a wooded forest. And if we look at sort of the demographics of the empire, it wasn't until the latter half of the 19th century that the empire becomes a majority Muslim empire. In fact, before that, right, it always had far more Christian subjects than Muslim subjects. And certainly it ruled over large portions of the sort of historical Islamicate heartlands. It ruled over not only the sacred Muslim sites of Mecca and Medina, but also, right, sort of these heartlands of Egypt, Syria, right, Iraq, so the Levant, and all the way, right, in the west to the borders of Morocco, and all the way east to, right, even portions of Iran. And in the north, right, all the way up into Hungary, have ruled over, right, a good majority of Hungary for over a century. And in the south, right, all the way down to the tips of the Arabian Peninsula and beyond into the Horn of Africa. So today, if we look at this empire that is no more, it composed over at least 25 successor states. You could even argue that number to be 29, just depending on how you sort of draw the map of the Ottoman Empire. And in terms of the sources of the Ottoman Empire, the historical records, we would say that these historical records are of genealogical significance for at least 500 million people living today. That that 500 million people can probably find their ancestors in the records of the Ottoman Empire. And why is that? Well, what I would say is that empires run on paper. And by that, I mean that when we think of empires, we often think of conquest, right? This sort of, the warfare and the expansion of an empire and the force and violence that it requires to run and continue an empire. But in fact, right, an empire is as much an economic entity as it is sort of a military entity. It runs and it functions because it makes economic sense. And for it to do that, it has to be able to communicate between the metropole, the sort of capital, and the periphery. And it does that through a lot of record keeping. So all empires ran on paper. And even before there was paper, right? If we look back at the sort of empires of Mesopotamia, they were running on, clay tablets because they didn't have paper at that time. And we can look at those clay tablets and actually, right, do quite a bit of research from the hundreds of thousands of them that still exist today, even though these empires, right, passed away over 3,000 years ago. So the Ottoman Empire is not alone in this, right? It created millions and millions and millions of records, and we can find them today. But unfortunately, they're strewn all around the world. Now, if we go to Istanbul, right, we find the largest collection of them. So there are hundreds of millions of documents, right, just within the Ottoman archives in Istanbul. And then if we go beyond and look at private collections and archives, right, there's millions and millions more just in Istanbul. But right, there's millions of these records strewn about the former territories of the Ottoman Empire. We can find collections in Bulgaria, we can find them in Tunisia, we can find them in Syria, we can find them in Israel, right? We can find them everywhere today. But there's a problem with these records, and that is, right, first of all, that Ottoman is a dead language today. And so that brings us to the question of Ottoman Turkish. What do we do with this language? It's not like Latin or ancient Greek in being dead, right? If you're from, say, Europe or the United States, Latin America, right, finding someone to teach you Latin is pretty simple. Every university boasts at least one professor or many professors that will teach you Latin. In the case of Ottoman Turkish, right, if you're going to learn Ottoman Turkish, probably the only place where you're really going to find some decent instruction, so it is within Turkey itself today, and possibly in very large research institutions. But in large research institutions, the Harvards, of the world, right? Even there, you might find one or two professors that know Ottoman Turkish, but they probably don't have time to sort of give you a lesson on it. And what makes Ottoman Turkish particularly difficult is that it's not a common language. It was more of a court language. In fact, when you look at this language, right, when a poet and an Ottoman reformer called Ziya Pasha attempted to sort of write about the Ottoman language and to write poetry in the Ottoman language, he argued that there was no single Ottoman language. He referred to it as El Sine Selase. And this phrase here has a lot to unpack, because it really is, right, it really is in this Ottoman Turkish phrase, indicative of the problems of Ottoman Turkish. So Ottoman Turkish wasn't just Turkish written with the Arabic alphabet, as sometimes people believe. Ottoman Turkish was a sort of mix and an educated, an elite language for the educated within the Ottoman Empire. And it was El Sine Selassie, meaning the three languages, right? It was a mix of Arabic, Persian, and Turkish. So really, when you look at this phrase, this is a phrase spoken with a Turkish accent, and it has Arabic vocabulary and Persianate and Arabic grammar all combined. And that's what you run into with Ottoman Turkish, is sort of a mixing of these languages, but also a mixing of their grammars. So Ottoman Turkish doesn't just have a sort of foundation of Turkish grammar, it also has elements of both Arabic and Persian grammar as well. So you get, right, a lot of vocabulary from all these languages, but also grammar from these languages. And in fact, when someone wants to study Ottoman Turkish, what they're told to do is first become fluent in Turkish, and second, become fluent in either Arabic or Persian, and then start learning Ottoman Turkish. So this is a language that is not very open to researchers in the way that we could say maybe Latin is a little bit easier to sort of conquer if you're interested in looking at the records of the Roman Catholic Church or the Roman Empire, or right, Europe in general before the 16th or 17th century. Another issue with the Ottoman lands is that, right, there was Ottoman Turkish, as you can see in these posters these are postcards actually from the 1908 revolution, the Ottoman Revolution, the so-called Young Turk Revolution of 1908. And you see it's written in Ottoman Turkish here, Yaşasın Vatan, Yaşasın Millet, Yaşasın Hürriyet, right? And when they make these postcards, they make them available to the general public, not just in Ottoman Turkish, but in the local vernaculars of the Ottoman Empire. So pictured here in Greek, right? Zito patris, zito to ethno, zito eleftheria, right? So like this is, right, long live, and here in French, this is long live, the homeland, long live the nation, and long live liberty. Okay. So you've got other languages to deal with when you begin researching these territories. And sometimes when we want to investigate the past, whether it's in Anatolia, Tunisia, or the Arabian Peninsula, or Thessaloniki, right, we run into a variety of languages, and we have to be able to work with multiple languages. So if you want to study the Armenians of the Ottoman Empire, right, you're going to want to be able to read Armenian, but you're also going to have to read Ottoman Turkish. If you want to find your Kurdish ancestors, right, you're going to want to be able to read Kurdish and Arabic, but you're also going to want to be able to read Ottoman Turkish. And so to throw Ottoman Turkish on top of that, on top of learning these various languages of the Ottoman Empire, is too much to handle for most genealogical researchers or for historians. And that's why, right, for a good part, you'll see histories of peoples that lived in the Ottoman Empire that never even utilized the Ottoman records, which are so rich, just because Ottoman is it's a challenge for researchers to be able to investigate those records. Another issue that we run into alongside, right, this sort of dead language of the Ottoman Empire is, right, the question of dispersed archives. So there's a lot that is available today within Turkey, certainly within the archives that are not just in Istanbul, the Presidency's Ottoman Archive, the Başkanlık Osmanlı Arşivi of Istanbul, right, has the largest single collection of Ottoman records. Of course, to be able to investigate those records, you have to be able to speak both modern Turkish and Ottoman Turkish. And those aren't just the collection isn't just there. There's also collections in Ankara as well that are very important, and plenty of private collections and libraries that have records from the Ottoman Empire in Ottoman Turkish in Turkey that deal not just with the territory of Turkey, but territories of the empire in general. But interestingly enough, the second largest collection of Ottoman records is actually found in this library here. This is, if you go to the Oriental section of the Cyril and Methodius National Library of Sofia, they have what's claimed to be the second largest Ottoman collection. And they have millions and millions of records that are yet to be sort of poured through and investigated by historians, let alone, people that are interested, sort of armchair historians or genealogists. I've ran into Ottoman records all around the Middle East and the Balkans. If you go to the state archives of the Republic of North Macedonia, you'll find them. If you go to the historical archive of Macedonia and Thessaloniki, Greece, you'll find millions of Ottoman records there. The state archives of Tunisia, and then certainly the sort of heartlands of the Middle East, Syria, its Center for Historical Documents has millions of them. Iraq, the archives, the National Archives in Baghdad. Egypt, for instance, has an extremely large collection. Now, most of these, unfortunately, are not digitized, these collections, and they're not available online. In terms of Turkey, at least the Ottoman archives of Istanbul are digitized, and those records are available online with a caveat, that is, if you are a Turkish citizen. If you are not a Turkish citizen, you must physically go to Turkey, and you can either go to Istanbul or Ankara to be able to view the digitized records in their reading room. So while Turkey is sort of advanced in their digitization process and in allowing these records to be online, they still have a lot of doors that are sort of closed to us as citizens of other countries or researchers from other countries. So what is FamilySearch's approach? Well, FamilySearch's approach is what we call the Ottoman Initiative. We'd like to bring together as many different organizations as possible that have their Ottoman records. We would like to digitize those records. In general, because FamilySearch is an organization concerned with family history, the records that we digitize would be of a family historical nature, sort of genealogical significance records. Something like what we see here, which is this is a nüfus defteri, which is a population register, something a little bit like something akin to vital records, and vital records and a census sort of combine. It's a method of registering the population continually. This is actually from the State Archives of Israel here. And I'll explain a little bit about what we're doing there with these records. Of course, what FamilySearch would like to do is preserve these records through digitization and share them, make them accessible online so people can investigate them. Now, to make them usable, it's fine to sort of digitize, because at least that's another way of preserving history is through digitization. If the bugs or other calamities get a hold of the physical records, at least we have a digital copy of the records. that's one thing, but that doesn't really open up the records for people to investigate them. We want to share them online, but again, like I've said, in terms of the question of Ottoman Turkish, sharing them online allows them to be useful to, specialists, historians like myself, that can go and sort of find out find the specific font, the specific documents that we're looking for, and pore over them and spend hours and hours looking through them. But we'd like them to be open and available to the general public. And that's where indexing comes in. By this, we'd like to make digital indices of Ottoman records so they become searchable. It means sort of transcribing what's there written in Ottoman Turkish to then make it completely searchable. And sort of pictured here, I'm actually helping our team that runs out of Tunisia, that is doing precisely this with the Ottoman records. We started with the nüfus registers, the population registers of Israel Palestine, right? And we've now moved on to starting to do another project with the records from Albania, similar records from Albania, and also records from Astrakhan, Russia. So actually sort of records that were on the periphery of the Ottoman Empire, but were written in Ottoman Turkish. So we're working on this indexing project at the moment. But ultimately, we don't just want to index, we also want to permit translation, immediate translation of these records. So the next step that we are working on will be to provide translation of everything that is indexed. So anyone around the world can search these records, find what they're looking for, and also understand them, not need to be able to read Ottoman Turkish to understand at least the essential parts of these records. Now, that takes a lot of manpower. So we're currently funding a team of about 15 individuals in Tunisia to do this work. But eventually what we'd like to do is develop handwritten text recognition, sort of handwriting recognition for these records. And we've already started that. And you can see this is part of a data set that we're creating. This is segmentation that is used to feed into a natural language processor, sort of AI, that can then sort of begin to read the Ottoman Turkish. It's very time consuming. It requires not only transcription, but this sort of segmentation of the text so that the computer can actually read it. And at this moment, we've done several hundred of these data sets, several hundred images from these data set for this data set. And we fed it into the AI, and the HTR, or what we call in-house HWR, the handwriting recognition, is improving. It's not where we'd want it. It's between the 60 and 70% range at the moment. We want to get that up to 80% accuracy. But that's sort of the future of this. So basically, I'm making myself redundant by sort of leading this this effort of HTR development. But in the end, right, this is something that will really revolutionize historical research. It will sort of democratize historical research, because so many people will be able to pore over records in so many different languages. And as a historian, I want people to be engaged with historical sources, primary sources, and as a genealogist, I want that as well, right? This is a way of promoting history, family history, genealogy. Now, what can be done with these records? Well, this sort of effort that FamilySearch has been doing in-house has also been done by Turkey, the state of Turkey. And they offer a family tree to all of their citizens. If you have a Turkish ID number, a kimlik numarası, you can go to the e-devlet system, the e-state system, and you can receive a family tree from the Turkish government. And how do they create that family tree? It's relying upon not just the records of the Republic of Turkey, but the records of the earlier Ottoman records that these nüfus records, that many of them are now housed in Ankara and unfortunately not open to the general public and researchers like myself. But they have gone through the difficulty of indexing these records, and so they are now creating, right, almost instantaneously, family trees for their entire population using Ottoman records. Now, at FamilySearch, we'd love to be able to do that for people all around the world. And certainly we'd like to be able to support those people who have ancestors from the former Ottoman lands. So if they have ancestors from Tunisia, or if they have ancestors from Greece, or from Bulgaria, or from the Levant, right? We'd like them all to be able to utilize these Ottoman records in this way and be able to generate their own family trees instantaneously. So that's sort of the dream. Now, what is the Ottoman Initiative? Well, this is what we're doing for the Ottoman Initiative, but we are inviting others to join in this cause. We want to work with other archives, other libraries that have Ottoman records, or that or other organizations that are concerned with preservation, digitization, searchability of Ottoman records. And so these are my sources. But if you have an interest in this effort, I invite you to email us at Ottoman Collaborative at FamilySearch.org. Of course, you can always email me. If you look me up online, Jonathan McCollum, you'll probably see me connected to both BYU and FamilySearch. You can find my email there online. I'll also put my email in the chat if you'd like to contact me directly. Let me do that right now. Probably this is the best email to reach me at. And I'm always happy to sort of work with anyone. And I am very busy, and sometimes it takes me a while to respond to emails, but I do try to respond to emails. And that is it for my presentation. I guess we can. I guess we have time for questions, I believe. Is that right, Sherry?
Yes. Thank you, Jonathan. That was so fascinating. You know, I've done a little bit of research, very small, tiny bit, and a little understanding of the history of the Ottoman Empire, but I did not know all the details about the language. So that was fascinating. So you mentioned quite a few of them, and since I'm moderating, I'm just going to take over and ask my questions first while we're waiting for anyone to please put any questions in the Q&A and we will get to them. But how many languages do you estimate are involved in these records?
So
like over a 600-year period of time, that's a lot.
There's Ottoman Turkish all throughout that period, right?
Right.
And that's the foundational language. And when I see someone writing, and this happens all the time, someone will write a history of, say, like Greece during the Ottoman era, or Bulgaria in the Ottoman era, or Syria or Egypt during the Ottoman era. They don't even look at the Ottoman records. They don't even try, right? Which is kind of like writing the history of, the United States in the 19th century without using English, right? It's preposterous, but it's just what happens and what is done, unfortunately. And right, that language is a difficulty. And so And there's ways to write those histories, right, without looking at the Ottoman records, right? And of course, you get one perspective from the Ottoman records, right? You're getting the perspective of the ruling class, right? And yeah,
Right.
of course, there is a reason to look at Greek records at the time of the Ottoman Empire and see how Greeks are living under the Ottomans. And I think that's an excellent endeavor to make. And we need to understand that perspective, but you need to balance it, right? Any history is balanced, and any person that is a historian or a genealogist knows that, right? You go after all of the sources. But again, this is the linguistic difficulty that we deal with. So how many languages are we dealing with? In terms of written languages, we've got many written languages, right? We've got the big ones. So you got Ottoman Turkish, but then you have, right, Persian, you have Arabic. You have in the Balkans, right? Greek is probably the largest one that you have in terms of written records, but then you have, along with sort of the Orthodox Church and just the education within the Orthodox Church, right? So not just Greeks themselves, but Bulgars or Serbians or Albanians, yeah, right? You name it, they many of them are writing in Greek. But you also have these other sort of like vernaculars of the Balkans that are becoming languages. So you do have records written in Albanian. You do have records written in Romanian or Hungarian, or right, or Vlach even, or just a variety of languages just within the Balkans. And then you have, right, many languages throughout the Middle East. So you have the Kurdish language, right, but then you have Syriac. You have Hebrew, of course, that's being records are being written in Hebrew. You have throughout the Ottoman Empire, probably through the Ottoman centuries, probably the language that is most spoken by Jews throughout the Ottoman Empire is in fact Ladino, sort of Judeo-Spanish. So it's the language of the Jewish emigres from Spain that are forcibly deported in 1492. And a lot of them wind up in the Ottoman Empire. And these and most of their records are written in Ladino, but then you have sort of older Mizrahi, older Eastern Jewish populations that are keeping a lot of their records in Hebrew as well. Then you have, right, French, which becomes sort of a lingua franca that is used by a lot of people. So even though, right, you don't really have native French speakers or communities of francophones, but people begin to learn French as a lingua franca throughout the Ottoman Empire, to the extent that even the Ottoman foreign service, a lot of their records begin to be written in French during the 19th century up until the end of the empire. You have in North Africa, you've got, right, not just Arabic but Amazigh, and you have Judeo-Arabic as well. So many Jewish populations are writing. They're writing Arabic with Hebrew characters. So yeah, to tell you, yeah, how many languages are there? There's probably dozens of languages, and probably a good 12 to 15 that are throughout the empire that have millions of records in these languages. Yeah.
Wow, thank you. I think that just goes to show how important the collaboration is, so that you really could show and tell literally the complete story. A very holistic approach needs to be that the story is told from so many different perspectives and in different languages. I do have a question. What academic centers and websites provide resources for Ottoman records and collaborations? I know you mentioned a couple, but Can you go into a few more academic centers, websites, universities?
Websites, universities. So there's in terms of support for Ottoman Turkish or support for Ottoman records. So in terms of support for Ottoman records, there's obviously those that I mentioned in Turkey. The state archives of Israel have a lot of records, Ottoman records that they from time to time they open up, and sometimes they close them down, but those are digitized. In terms of in-person investigations, so for instance, sadly, Greece has a great digitization effort of records in Greek, but they have millions and millions of Ottoman records. But because of a sort of troubled history, sort of dividing themselves as sort of anti-Ottomans or anti-Turks, right? The records of the Ottoman Empire get sort of pushed to the back of the line. And so in many cases, the state archives in Greece, many of the records, the Ottoman records, haven't even been cataloged in some of the smaller branches of the state archives. In the larger branches, they've at least been cataloged, but they haven't been digitized, despite the fact that they're of great sort of significance for a lot of researchers. It depends. Any country that you go to that is a successor state of the Ottoman Empire.
So any of those 27 to 29 countries that you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, you're going to find Ottoman records in their state archives. So I've seen them in Romania. I've seen them in Macedonia, in North Macedonia, right? I've seen them in Albania. I've seen them in Tunisia. I'm trying to go see them in Algeria. It's a little bit difficult at the moment, but so these records are all throughout the former lands of the empire. In terms of support for the language, there's a lot of universities in the United States that have aids for learning Turkish, but not so much for Ottoman Turkish. Because it is so specialized. There are also universities that have some Ottoman records in the United States. Harvard has the largest Ottoman collection, sort of on the American continent. And some of those records are digitized, but many times you have to become a sort of like patron of the Harvard Library, or go there and actually sort of inscribe as a researcher to be able to access them online. So there are a lot of resources out there, but unfortunately, at the current time, right, a lot of this is not open to the general public. And so we have like these multiple steps that we have to get through, is that we want the records to be digitized, we want them online, but we also want them to be understandable, which is that ultimate sort of indexing, translation, which is happening at the moment. So there's a lot of OCR programs that you can pay for. In a lot of Turkish companies have Ottoman Turkish OCR, where you can pay a fee and you can put printed Ottoman Turkish into their system, and it will generate a transcription and a translation into modern Turkish. So a transliteration into Ottoman Turkish with Roman characters, and then a translation into modern Turkish. And one of them actually has, I think, a translation into English, but this is just OCR. So it is printed Ottoman Turkish. So yeah, if you have a newspaper, you can do that. But it's not for most historians and genealogists, right? What we're most concerned about is what's written in handwriting. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions for Jonathan. This has been so fascinating. I'm afraid now that I'm going to need to get a list of a few books to read to do a deeper dive into this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
I'd be happy to give you some some guidance there, but yeah, unfortunately there's not and I haven't
There's
found
not
an
an Ottoman Empire for Dummies yet. You could go
yeah.
ahead and, write that in your spare time.
There are a lot of textbooks out there, but I'd like to assign a textbook that is like comprehensive, but also interesting, right? And maybe that's something that I need to do is write that text, right? A nice sort of introduction to the Ottoman Empire that doesn't put you to sleep at night. Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, looks like Rose Feldman has a comment. The Israel State Archives did an index of the nüfus,
Nüfus, yeah. That's
nüfus.
the Israeli, yeah.
Nüfus.
The
Thank you. I butcher all languages equally, including
yeah,
English.
yeah.
Nüfus. Okay, so that you know what section to go to. Oh,
Yes.
good
So
information to know.
on the records, yeah, the Israeli state archives have they tell you which cities and which villages. So you don't have to look through the entire collection. You can focus in on specific areas. And so what we're trying to do is go to the next level, which is sort of like indexed to the very name. Yeah. So like
Oh,
the name of an
fantastic.
individual, not just the village. So yeah.
Excellent. Ah, thank you, Elizabeth.
Ottoman for Dummies podcast. Oh, that's nice.
Oh, good. I'll have
Yes.
to start listening to that.
Oh yeah, I should have mentioned also SOAS, yeah, in London has quite a bit. Yeah.
See, this is what I appreciate is when we gather as a collective, it's like not only am I learning so much, but it's like every individual who's on this webinar has their own experiences and information. And as a collective, we can share and gather it and be able to use these resources. I think it really does help everyone involved.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, if there's no more questions for Jonathan, then we could go ahead. Oh, wait. Could AI be used for indexing and translating written Ottoman Turkish records?
Yes, that is that is our goal, right? That's the end goal. So we have we're training the computer right now to be able to do that. It probably won't in the near term. I mean, in 3 years, we hope we will have sort of up to 80% accuracy rate for the AI that will then be able to sort of do computer assisted indexing. We would say call it computer assisted indexing because there's going to need to be a human to at least check the work of the computer because 80%. Yeah, I'm a professor, so that's a B- in my book. That's not that's not what that's not the
It's a
accuracy.
passing grade, but that's not the ideal.
Yeah, exactly. Certainly it helps, but yeah, there's probably going to be a need for human eyes for the next several years. But eventually, right, I mean, this is going to be a development where, yes, the computer will be able to index everything for us. And this would be excellent for researchers of all sorts, not just genealogists, because the idea would be the computer could read any text, right, on any subject instantaneously, and we can do searches based on keywords, and they could generate a transcription, a transliteration if we wanted to, and eventually probably a translation for us. Yeah.
Wow, it's wonderful when we can get technology to help assist us in being more educated and more aware of the world around us. So, okay, well, Thank you all so much, especially Jonathan. Thank you so much. This is fascinating. I always learn a lot from these webinars. We appreciate everyone who is in attendance and, live. We will send out a link. So if you want to go back and watch the recording, if you'd like to share it with colleagues or friends, feel free to do so. If you would like more information about IFLA or the multicultural, local history, genealogy, Middle East, feel free to reach out to Jennifer, Laylee, Waleed, and myself, and we would be happy to help you with this. And meanwhile, for those of you who are starting your day, I hope you have a good one. And for those of you who are ending your day, I hope you have a peaceful night. So thank you all for your attendance.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.